Hi, this is Brad, and welcome back to the Analog Universe. Today, we're going to talk about the peer review funnel. So, science works in paradigms. Before Darwin, it was generally accepted that God created life on planet Earth, and that was pretty much the accepted paradigm. It's just what scientists of the day believed. Then came Darwin, and after some years of discussion, Darwin's views won the day, and now virtually all biologists see the world through the paradigm of evolution and descent with modification. It's how they see the world. And it's what they use to develop their theories. Before germs were discovered, there was a miasma theory of disease, that diseases were caused by bad airs that were given off by rotting substances. And it was these miasmas that caused disease. Okay, then germs were discovered, and now doctors accept that it's germs that cause diseases. Before Einstein came along, the prevailing paradigm was predominantly Newtonian. Scientists and physicists of the day saw the world through a Newtonian lens, let's say, through the Newtonian paradigm. Okay, then Einstein came and eventually his views won the day. And physicists today largely see the universe through relativistic and standard model paradigms. Now, Thomas Kuhn's was a scientific philosopher who talked about paradigm entrenchment in his 1962 book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Basically, what he said is scientists see the world through these paradigms, which, yes, obviously they do, but that those paradigms become entrenched, and therefore scientists look at the world through those paradigms, but they don't accept evidence that would lead to paradigm shifts and looking at the world in different ways. They get stuck in these paradigms. In other words, I think what he's saying is there's a massive amount of confirmation bias in the sciences because they see the world as they were taught to see it. Okay, confirmation bias is everywhere. We all have it. I'm a Padres fan. Say the Padres are playing a baseball game with the Dodgers, and there's a close call, and Fernando Tatis is called out at home. Okay, I'm sitting here with my friends who are all Padre fans, and we're watching the game, and we're all shouting, "What ump, you're blind? You need glasses. Are you kidding? He was safe." And of course, across town, there's a house full of Dodgers fans going, "Yay, great call, ump. That's exactly right. Good call." Okay, so that's confirmation bias that we sports fans experience every time we watch a game. And we know it. It's part of the fun of being a sports fan. You're watching the game in the light most favorable to your team. It's what we do, and we admit it. It's pretty standard stuff, but what's not discussed as much is how this confirmation bias creeps into the peer review process. Okay, I don't think this is earth-shattering, but when theories don't lead us to the predictions or to the places that they should take us, it should be time to examine the basis of those theories, as in physics, where 100 years of examination and study can't unify quantum mechanics and relativity. Okay, that thundering sound you're hearing right now is every physicist out there saying, "What are you talking about?" These two theories have led us to so many discoveries and breakthroughs. They're amazing. They're the most successful theories in the history of science. And yes, correct. They've led us to amazing breakthroughs and discoveries because the math in them is correct. But that doesn't mean we haven't fallen victim to the Ptolemaic fallacy. So would it hurt that much just to take a small peek at the basis of these theories? 100 years. Can't resolve fundamental contradictions in these theories. So it's in the nature of humans to believe in something. Before our current modern scientific revolution, before we knew how the world works in biology and physics and everything we know today, pretty much everybody believed in God. And you could ask why that is, but I would argue it's because we as humans are pre-programmed, if you will, to have a belief, to believe in something. And we all believe in something. And it's good for us to acknowledge that, yeah, I have my beliefs, and that's the paradigm through which I see the world. And it would be helpful for physicists to say, I'm looking at physics through my paradigm, but I could be open to other ideas as well. Somebody else might have another idea, and I would listen to that. So it's in the nature of humans to believe. You may believe in God. A lot of people do. You may believe that there's no God. A lot of people do. But the belief that there's not a God is a belief. The point is, physicists get entrenched in their paradigms, in their beliefs, just like the rest of us do. And that's not derogatory towards physicists. It just makes them human like the rest of us. But it does mean that unless they acknowledge their confirmation bias, they're going to be looking at the world, at new data, at new theories, in ways that will confirm their pre-existing beliefs. Okay, so now let's look at the peer review funnel. Peer review, for those that don't know, is if you're a scientist and you come up with a new idea and you write a paper about it, you want to send that to a scientific journal where other scientists in your field will read that and hopefully be influenced by your paper. But to get published in that journal, you don't have to convince the editor to publish your paper. You go through a peer review process where other scientists in your field review your paper, and they can approve it, in which case it can be published. They can reject it, in which case it won't be published. Or they can say, you know, this can be published, but you need to make these changes. Okay, so people today in the sciences say very, very good things about the peer review process, but let's look at it from this point of view. The scientists who are on these peer review boards have their own paradigms. And if you're a biologist, somebody's going to be looking at it through the evolution paradigm. So what if you write a paper that challenges evolution and say maybe evolution doesn't always work through descent with modification, maybe it works this way? Well, that would challenge a core tenet of the evolution paradigm and be very hard to get that through the peer review process. It would hit the peer review funnel and probably be rejected. What if a young physicist were to write an article and say perhaps, well, 100 years, not unifying relativity and quantum mechanics. Perhaps there is something to this Ptolemaic fallacy. Let's look at the underlying basis of relativity. Well, again, that's going to hit the peer review funnel. the peer reviewers are going to look at that and say, that doesn't fit our paradigm. That's not scientific. Who would think that? And they wouldn't approve it. But it gets worse than this. Okay, I've known more than my share of physicists. Don't know why. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. Just kind of where my life has taken me. And I've known a number of physicists. I gotta say, as people go, they are very nice people. They're significantly nicer than most people you will meet. That's not a scientific sampling, it's just the few physicists I've known, but they've seemed to be very, very nice people. Looking at this online, one could get a different view of physicists. I don't know how uncivil they would be to you, but okay, if you've ever watched the show Young Sheldon, there's some physicists at a university on that show. And you see these two particular physicists get into arguments all the time. And they say things like, that's ridiculous. You don't know anything. You wouldn't know a muon from a down quark if it hit you in the nose. And, it's a sitcom and they exaggerate. But online, you can find instances of, physicists being very uncivil to other physicists in discussing their theories. So is this a thing? I've read broadly in books that scientists write for us lay people. And I haven't come across this lately, so I can't cite anything specifically, but it's been pretty clear in the literature that I've read that scientists can get very uncivil with other scientists, and that this has, in some cases, I don't know how many, cost scientists their careers. When their ideas were panned so badly, nobody would accept anything they submit anymore. And they've ended up losing their careers. I read one instance, this was, I think, in the early 1900s, where this panning of a new scientist who came up with a new and interesting idea was so severe that he committed suicide. So scientists know this. Scientists know the danger of questioning well-entrenched beliefs. And so the biggest danger of the peer review funnel isn't that you're going to come up with an idea and not have it accepted by the peer review panel, but the biggest danger could be that it stops new ideas even from being aired, because scientists know what's going to happen to people that come up with new and creative ideas that are beyond the currently accepted paradigm. So science is supposedly a search for new truths, but it'll never be truly that honest search as long as we only accept some truths, as long as we only accept truths that support our paradigm. So I think I'll leave this episode with this. This is my favorite study I've ever come across in the social sciences. And I think it was in a book edited by Erik Erikson, a very famous psychologist. But it was decades ago. I don't have the book anymore. I can't tell you the book. And I don't think Erikson was the author of this paper. I wish I could attribute to the author who actually wrote the paper, but do not know who he or she was anymore. If you happen to know this study and can acknowledge the author, please write a note below. But here's the study. This happened on a college campus, and they brought a bunch of college students in. And it was a bright and sunny day, and they asked the students a bunch of lifestyle questions. How happy are you with your life? Are you loved and cared for by your friends and family? Do you enjoy school? All these questions. And the answer to, most students gave generally positive answers. Yes, I like my life. They brought a bunch of students in on another day that was cold and rainy and asked them the same questions, and they gave generally negative responses. Oh, I'm not really happy with my life. Okay, and here's the brilliant part to the study. Then they brought a third group of students in on a rainy day and said, okay, we're going to ask you all these lifestyle questions, but I notice it's raining out there. Do you think that'll affect your response? Some students said yes, some students said no, but that doesn't matter. The interesting part of the study is once they brought this issue that had been affecting the results to the attention of the students, students again gave generally positive answers to the question, and they were happy with their lifestyle once again. I don't know any way to get over our paradigm biases except to acknowledge them and say, hey, this is my paradigm bias. I recognize it. And do I want it to affect how I view other people's ideas? So I'll just throw that out there. But again, my purpose here is to start a discussion. And I can't do that without you. So write a comment. Let me know what you think. Am I off base here? Is the peer review funnel a real thing? And most importantly, have you come up against the peer review funnel? Have you had experience with it? If so, let us know your experience with it. But join me next time when we finally talk about gravity. I'll see you then.